Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. Today on the podcast, we're out on the west coast of the USA. In the early and mid-70s, U.S. high school runners had some amazing things going on. There were 3 high school runners out of Hammond, Indiana, all running under 9 minutes in the 2 mile. But out in California, there was a hub of excellent high school runners. We got one of them with us today who ran internationally, won national championships, was a part of 2 teams that won World Junior Cross Country Championships, set national records, and embarked on a career and stayed in the sport and shoe design for decades. We'll talk today with an icon of running in the 70s. Welcome today, Ralph Serna.
Thank you, Matthew. Good to be here.
Ralph, let's tell everyone your origin story. How did you get started with competitive running?
How I got started running was in 1969. I was in 7th grade. Started doing the old presidential physical fitness things that was going on back then. Every Friday, we had to run a mile on the track. I'm not from a family of athletes per se. My grandfather was a sprinter, but that was about the only connection I had with track. Didn't really know it. Played Little League baseball like everyone else. Get into 7th grade. Now on Fridays, we're running the mile. I can specifically remember a fast runner in my PE class running somewhere in the 6 minutes. I remember running 7-8 minutes a mile and deciding one day, I want to catch that guy. And I was in 7th, he was in 8th. Long story short, within about 3 or 4 months, all of a sudden I'm running in this 6 minutes now, 6:30, 6:45. Coach comes to me in the fall of 69 and says, you should go out for track. Not knowing much about it, I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. Come the springtime of 1970, I started running on the track team and went out for the 13:20, 3 laps, the longest race that we would have in junior high school competition. I was in Anaheim, California, 2 miles from Disneyland. Maybe we'd compete against 6 other junior high schools, and that was half of our Anaheim district. There was another half. And eventually you'd get to the district meet, but you weren't allowed to go to that until 9th grade. So I started running 13:20. Lo and behold, my entire first year, I never lost a race and broke the 7th grade class record. I ended up running 3:53.4. I remember that time. I also ran a 5:25 mile later in PE. So I got into the 5s and I set that record too. That was the beginning of my running career.
Let's talk about then what it was like in your junior high school. You had a spectacular career. You broke 4:20 in the mile in junior high school. Let's talk about what the environment was like. What were the track surfaces? What shoes were you running with? And what was your training?
Training per se, I couldn't really even remember what we did, but I remember 7th and 8th grade, we really didn't do a lot of anything that even stuck with me, I should say. Later, towards the end of my 8th grade year, we got a new coach, and he was currently at Long Beach State. He came over and he actually had a whole process, a whole game plan. And that's the first time I ever really got to know what true running regime was as far as training for an 8th grader. I was all probably a 5'2", not even sure if I weighed 90 pounds yet. I was always a small guy. Growing up, I was never the last pick, never the first pick. I was always a middle of the road guy. So all of a sudden I saw this coach coming over from Long Beach State, and he was really, really old, which meant he was probably 22. Something like that, coming out of college. My 8th grade year, I continued. I never lost a race. And every week in 8th grade, I would break my own 8th grade class record and eventually ran 3:32 in the 1320. Now I'm running faster than the ninth graders. I end up running a 5:05 mile at the end of eighth grade. Is the first summer that I ever decided to train during the summer. And I remember I kept a running log, and I accumulated over the summer 125 miles. I ran maybe 5 or 6 times under 5 minutes. My best time, still considering myself an eighth grader, that summer I ran 4:45. I started to run against guys in the all-comers meets that, again, that's something new, a new frontier for me, at Orange Coast College, which was well known for their JC cross country and track programs. They also competed with Grossmont, which is Bob Larson's team down in San Diego before Coach Larson went to UCLA. So Orange Coast was well known. They put on these all-comers meets. I show up, I started running all these races. Again, I still never lost any of the all-comers meets. So for my first 2 years, I get to run 4:45 in the mile. I haven't lost a single race in 2 years, which leads me into my ninth grade year. That's when things greatly change with a new coach change. Fortunately for me, my junior high school coach, Coach Jones, realized that I was progressing so quickly. He actually brought in people, to his credit, that he thought could do better for me than even he could. And that changed my entire running career.
Who were your teammates? Did you have anybody who could run anywhere near you since you didn't face competition from the other schools?
We had an amazing team in my eighth and ninth grade year, especially my ninth grade. We had some people transferring into the area that I was in Anaheim. I went to Trident Junior High School. Someone that transferred in my ninth grade year, Bob Gallagher, in junior high school competition. I go to the district meet. I still haven't lost a race. I end up running 3:14 all by myself, broke the district record by 10 seconds. My teammate, Bob Gallagher, ran 3:29 in the 13th, which is pretty amazing. I think Bob got fifth in the district. We had someone who got seventh, Brad Hudson, who was my all-time longest friend, and I still talk to him today. He ran 3:33.1, which he always highlights to say that's the same time Jim Ryan ran in his 1,500 meters. So he's proud of that, in fact. I run 3:14. Bob runs 3:29. Brad runs 3:33. And we have another guy, Paul French, who runs 3:36. That's pretty amazing and pretty impressive for a junior high school team. And that's all done within maybe 6 weeks because our season was so short.
Is this long spikes on cinder tracks?
This is very dirt as dirt gets. We didn't really have cinders out in the West Coast. It was just dirt. And hopefully the kids didn't run their BMX bikes on the track on a rainy day before a track meet, or that would ruin everything. And they did occasionally, but it was as dirt as it got, with a rotting inside rail that kind of kept you on the track. And maybe there'd be clumps of grass on the track as you ran. But it was as dirt gets. It wasn't crushed brick. It wasn't anything nice. It was not sandy, which was a plus, but the dirt had got compacted. They didn't really drag the track. So the track was poor as it got for even then. And we were running in our 4-spike shoes. Eighth grade, I didn't have spikes. I ran in the Converse Tracksters, for those of you who might remember the old Tracksters. In eighth grade, I bought a pair of $4 Wilson track spikes, but they just didn't work well for my foot. Fortunately, our family didn't have a lot of money to spend, but my dad worked overtime and was able to buy me in eighth grade, when I was 14, a pair of $9 Adidas Avantes. Then in ninth grade, when I started running especially fast, my grandfather, for my 15th birthday, bought me a pair of Adidas Tokyos, which to this day I think are some of the greatest spikes ever made.
That's great. Let's talk about the transition into your high school career. At some point, you go from winning every race, setting records. That's one thing. But moving to the elite of the nation, as that happened, of course, in your career intertwined with other great runners of the time, Eric Holst, Tom Hunt. When did you run into a threat to you to not win every race? And when did it dawn on you that this was really something special that you were doing?
A quick back step for a second. After winning the Anaheim District 1320, back in those days, there were categories of B's and C's. There was no junior varsity in CIF, which is the governing body here in California. And the B's and C's were meant to try to put people of the same physical stature together. So B's were probably, you could equate it to a junior varsity runner, maybe a sophomore, junior, maybe even a senior. And the C's were even smaller people like myself. So now in ninth grade, I had a growth sprout and I was like 5'4" and 102 pounds. And so I was massive, right? I was a C because they had what we call exponents for your weight, your height, and your age. And so add those point systems up and they determine if you're a B or C. I was a C, and I could be a C when I graduated from high school if I wanted to be. But because of that, I won the Anaheim District Junior High School. Then I ran so fast, they let me run in the high school CIF championships, which was 3 meets prior to the state meet at the end of May. And in my very first one, here I am. I still haven't lost a race. Now I'm running against high school kids who could possibly be seniors. And I'm just running scared. And I end up winning the very first round, the quarterfinals. I run 309.3. And I just ran out of my head. I win the race. The next week, I advanced to the semifinals. Very first loss of my entire career. I get second place, but I run another 309 again. I get to the finals. This time, 2 guys beat me, both juniors in high school, and I'm a freshman. I run another 309.3, and I get third, and that's the end of my season, I thought. Lo and behold, the state meet happens, and a week later, I get an invitation to run in Don Franken and Al Franken's Vaughn's Classic at the Coliseum. I was, of course, like many people, a huge Jim Ryan fan at the time. This is in the summer of 72. Jim Ryan is making a comeback, and he is going to run in the Vaughn's Classic meet. And here I am. I'm going to run it in a special invitational mile against the best in the state. And I'm still a junior high school kid, basically. That's when I ran my 419.7. I finished 7th out of about 10 runners. So somehow I beat the varsity guys and guys who just came back from the state meet. That's the same race that Curtis Beck, as a junior, ran 404. I was 15 seconds behind him in the home stretch coming in. And that was the kind of level that we already had, even at that point. I think Bob O'Brien ran 408. And then there was a whole slew of people between him and me. That was the 419. So I, in fact, at the end of my 9th grade, had lost 3 races. But we go into high school, and there's all new names, all new people, and I'm just trying to maneuver my way through it. In cross country, I lost 4 races my entire high school career. 3 of them were in my sophomore year. I lose to a guy in the invitational. He was a senior. I'm a sophomore. He beat me by a couple seconds. That's great. Then I get to the CIF, the championships for Southern California. There was no state meet. It was CIF at San Antonio College, Mount Sac. I lost in the prelims. And then in the finals, I bounced back and I got 3rd place in the finals. I was beating guys like Barry Williams, who had run 406 and had broken Jim Ryan's 16-year-old world record in the mile. I beat Elvin Gilmore, who was from the famous Lompoc cross-country team, the legendary team, and a host of others. The 2 guys to beat me my sophomore year was Curtis Beck who was the fastest returning miler, and Terry Williams, who was one of the fastest returning 2 milers. Terry won. Curtis Beck was 2 seconds ahead of me in that final. So even though I lost those 3 meets my sophomore year, I thought that I was still moving up and beginning to hear certain names. The one name that popped up that day when I got third was a kid named Eric Hulse from Laguna Beach, a freshman who had skyrocketed and did quite well in his division because he was in a smaller division. The school I went to, Loera High School, I always tell people it's the nearest high school to Disneyland. You can pretty much spit from Disneyland back to Loera. We were a large school, so I had to run against the very best. And Eric did quite well, but he was in the small school divisions.
What was it like for you psychologically then, having lost a couple races? You're always looking at these people older than you, and you haven't met now almost anybody your age at that point at your skill level. Who else were you looking at? What was your goal setting like? You're working with your coach at the beginning of your junior year. What did you think was possible then?
I think like everyone in my 9th and 10th grade year, I certainly became a student of the sport. Jim Ryan fan, and then I'd start to become familiar with some guy named Steve Prefontaine, and then the host of everyone else that were the Olympians and the nation's best. Like everyone, you wanted to be the next 7 4-minute miler. I consider myself a miler all the way through college. Like everyone, you dream of the 4-minute mile to join that group with Danielson and LaCour and Ryan. How is that possible? Back in the dirt track days, 4 spikes in your shoes, those days. Certainly, I dreamt of that as well. I dreamt of breaking 9 minutes in the 2 mile. What ended up happening my sophomore year, to recap that quickly, did well across country and then hibernated till that very short California indoor season, which meant the Sunkist meet, the LA Times, and possibly San Diego Jack in the Box. We didn't go up to San Francisco to the Cow Palace, but certainly they had that meet up there too. So my sophomore year, I got, I think, third in the indoor mile at the Sunkist. Barry Williams won it, and I ran 4:24 my sophomore year indoors. So that's my second best mile ever. And it's indoor. It's only January. Run in the LA Times 2 mile my sophomore year and think I'm going to win the race. There was only one other sophomore in the race by the name of Robert Angel, who, to your point, and that, call it that golden age of running then, Robert Angel was in my league. You got used to guys like that being in your league. That was just part of it. He ends up sprinting by me so fast at the end of the race, he breaks the national record. First time he ever beat me, he runs 9:14.8. I run 9:15.8. I also break the old record, but he was a second ahead of me. In that race, Barry and Terry Williams run 8:55, 8:56. And Robert and I are fighting for last place in that race. So it was that kind of an era. Everyone else was upperclassmen. So having all those dreams, and at the very end of my track season, my sophomore year, I make it to the state. I was the only sophomore in the mile in the final. I run 4:16, but I had run 4:13 the week before to qualify for state. Do that as a sophomore. I was happy. I finished 7th. I made it to the finals. I'll do better next year. Then my coaches said, why don't we have you run a 3-mile race as a sophomore still? There was some outdoor track meets, all comers meets at Pierce College in LA. I'm living in Orange County. We drove the hour to Pierce College. All the guys from college are there. So they just throw you into one race, and they happened to throw me into the 3-mile race with a guy named Dave Babaraki. I don't know who Dave Babaraki is. I just know that he's good and that he's older. He's way older, like 23. So he's way old. He ends up running 13:45 in this 3-mile dirt track. I missed the national record that Mitch Hingry up north had just set, and I run 4:15. Mitch had run 4:12. Now I'm beginning to expand my horizon to now I've got to see if I can beat the guys in Northern California as well. The coaches say, we're going to give it one more shot. Go back to Pierce College and try to break the national sophomore 3-mile record. I think I'm a miler. I end up running the race. Babaraki beats me again. This time I run 14:10 and I set my first national record as a sophomore. That gave me the big hopes to move on for the rest of my running career. Then I began to hear about all these international meets, the junior championships, and all these things that we weren't really aware of, because just 1 year prior to that, I just found my very first all-comers meet 10 miles away, and that was my world. Now, all of a sudden, within 12 months, I'm thinking about the entire US. So my entire horizon just changed between being 15 and 16 years old.
Let's talk about some particular interesting things like running for the national team. Your first races against Russia, held in the US, but what was that experience like and what was your interaction with the athletes from abroad?
My first time against the Russians made my first national team. It's a funny story because I only lost one cross country meet my junior year. So now I'm a junior. I'm going 16, 17 years old. I only lost one cross country meet, and that was in the championship prelims to a guy named Gary Bloom, who, again, still communicate with. We always laugh about it, and I tell him that he was the last guy in high school to beat me when I was a junior. And again, he was in my league. So I had to run against him 3 times just in our league for the prelims and the league final. So those are the guys that I'm running with. Gary ends up running 9 flat. And this is a guy in my league. And he set the national record before. You just get used to running against these guys and you don't think anything of it. My teammates are running 4:18, 9:11 on my team. So that's the guys that we're dealing with. And get into track. I have a good track season, the well-known Arcadia Invitational, which is still a big meet in the high school world. Dirt track, not like it is now. It was a dirt track my junior year. In April, I ended up getting second place, but I make another big leap and I run 4:07.6 as a junior. And Andy Clifford beats me by a half a second. I get to the state final. I run 4:09. Rich Kimball is the first double champion in California history. He wins the mile in 4:06.7, beats Andy by an inch. And he had already run the 2 mile. He had run 8:46 and beat Eric, who by then was a sophomore. Eric runs 8:50 as a sophomore. Because of that, I head back to Gainesville, Florida. They raised the money to send me there. And I know that I have to get in the top 2 of the junior competition under 20. So as a junior in high school, 17-year-old, I might be competing against 19-year-old freshmen in college. My coaches threw me in the 10,000 and the 5,000, telling me there's no way you're going to make the 1,500 because you got Matt Centrowitz, you got Curtis Beck, you got all the guys, and there's just no way. I go ahead and do that. And before I left Loera High School, they threw me on the track and said, we want you to run 6 miles. We want you to run 30 minutes by yourself on a dirt track at my high school. And each of my teammates would run 1 mile with me at 5-minute pace. And I end up running exactly 30 minutes with the help of 6 other teammates of mine. That was a warm-up. Get to Gainesville, got to make the top 2 on the team to run against the Russians. I drop out of the 10,000 at 4 miles, and it was just too much. A guy named Buell, I think he might have been from Kentucky. He ended up winning. Eric Hulse got second as a sophomore. Eric's going to run against the Russians. The next day, my coaches had talked to me all night and said, no one's really thinking you're going to do anything tomorrow. The newspapers have said you've had a lackluster junior year. And I'm thinking, I ran 9:01 in the 2 mile. I ran 4:07 in the mile. How can I have a lackluster junior year? But he said, the pressure's off you. The plan was, he wanted me to come by between 9:10 and 9:15, which wasn't too far off my PR, at the 2 mile mark. And then he said, I just want you to run as hard as you can for the last mile. Don't turn back. Don't look back, and just go. And if they go with you, then you're going to have a race. And if they don't, you might make the team. That's what happened. I came by in 9:12. That was my junior year. And I didn't look back. Rich Kimball's in the race. And I'm just looking over because I know he has a lot more leg speed. He had run 4:02 at least twice that season. And I end up winning the race. I break Craig Virgin's 3-mile record en route. They timed the 3-mile in that 5,000. And I ran 13:45 and finished the 5,000. I ran 14:16 and was the national champion my junior year. I couldn't believe it. And Rich got second. So now I'm going to run with Rich Kimball against the Russians in Austin, Texas that year. We ended up getting a big lead in that race against the Russians, and they never really challenged Rich and I. And then Rich outsprinted me at the end. I think it was a hot, steamy day in Austin, Texas, as you might imagine. We both ran like 14:26, 14:27, something right in there in that range. But we beat the Russians by probably 20 or 30 seconds by a long shot. That was my first time internationally.
Tell me about your experience there in Austin. Still the Cold War. What was your interactions with the Russian team and coaches there?
They kept us secluded, really, and not in a terrible way. They just stayed with their team, and they might be in the cafeteria with us, but there was really not an exchange until the meet was over. It just seemed to me that they had traveled to Austin and they were just there for business, and they're going to get business done first, and then they would worry about making friends and being a bit friendlier. The U.S. team, of course, was also in that mindset, but I would think that we're a bit more open to talking during the competition that week, not in the races, of course, but around campus college.
Your training mileage was very low. Did you have any injuries up through high school at all?
I never had an injury my entire high school career. I didn't have an injury till my junior year in college. So I was quite fortunate. You're correct. Our mileage was really low. Our intensity was really high. That was still in the arena of long, slow distance, the LSD training method, but my coaches didn't push us that way. I had people that were competing against me in high school from rival schools. They were over 100 miles. They were almost 3 times as much as us, because if we got over 40 and rarely into 50 miles, that was saying something. So we're normally low 30ish, mid 30ish maybe, and then occasionally a bit above that. But we really focus on speed. And I always felt that was one of the reasons we did quite well. My junior year in high school, our cross country team, I believe we were rated 8th in the nation by Harrier magazine. And so I think that we had quite a good team. And we didn't lose any meets, any invitationals up until the final meet. And that was the CIF championships. And unfortunately, our 4th and 5th guy were really sick that day. And as you know, in cross country, I've always believed the 4th and 5th guys are more important than your top 3. If you can get those guys to finish well and do decent up front, you're going to be going a long ways.
We'll talk about World Cross Country in a little bit, where they only score 4 runners. You had at least one super fantastic race in the World Championships that you ran. What about barefoot training? Did you ever train barefooted?
I never trained barefooted. I know that Mark Covert did, but that was a little bit before me. But no,
I think I probably went through a half dozen pair of marathon shoes,
which back in the day were like $9. And there was no cushioning. Literally, it was just a rubber bottom and just a hair thin piece of blue little foam. Then the insole that basically would get slippery when it got wet. And I remember ripping out a couple on the side of the shoes when I do hill runs. They just ripped apart. They weren't like anything today, but they were really flexible, not quite like being barefooted. And everyone trained in the same shoe you raced in, pretty much.
I want to talk about your transition to college, what the world was like then, and the interest and your evaluation of the colleges and what you thought would happen with you after high school and where you wanted to go. But first, let's talk about the one race in your senior year, the all-time fastest second place. How'd that race go?
This one right here. This is the book, How High School Runners Train. Actually, on the cover is Eric and I at the Balboa Stadium, 1975, California State 2-mile. Yes. Leading up to that race, I had a great senior year. Didn't win every race, but I had a good senior year because, again, as to your point earlier, all of a sudden, Tom Hunt comes out of the woodwork and he runs his 4:08 in San Diego. Arcadia hasn't happened yet. I think he did that in March. And my senior year, I had not broken 4:20 prior to the Arcadia meet. And come to find out later, I thought it was just because I wasn't running good races, but my coaches were purposely training me harder with the idea that I would have to extend my season like a month or two beyond what everyone else did. Unbeknownst to me, they were running me tired, basically, racing me tired. So I remember my benchmark was what was called the Anaheim District Meet. I remember looking in the book when I was a sophomore, the program, and seeing a guy in the 60s had run 4:12 mile. And this is only between maybe 10 high schools in Anaheim. I wanted to break that record. I never broke that record. I think I ran 4:22 my senior year, and I just couldn't figure what was wrong. My coaches then tell me, we're going to rest you, and in 2 weeks, you're going to run Arcadia, and you're going to run 4:07 again. And as it turned out, Tom Hunt shows up, and I beat him. I end up running a fast last quarter, fast then on a dirt track. I ran 59, something like that, and I ran 4:07. It ends up being the fastest time in the country that year. So I was the fastest miler that year. Tom ends up running maybe a half second behind me. And then we both come back and run the 2-mile. Brian Hunsaker ends up winning, runs 8:58. Eric is hurt, so he can't come back after the mile. He had run a 4:11, I think, in the mile. And Tom comes back, runs 9:01. I come back and run after a mile time. And so because of that, then I started to see those guys in other meets. Alberto Salazar is coming up. Rudy Chapa, as you mentioned, all those guys are amazing, the three of them. And so just realizing how fast the entire country is, but you're just going with the flow because that's what you've been used to the entire time. And like I said, I had guys running 9:11, not as fast as Rudy's team, but certainly pretty impressive. Running 4:18 in the mile, another guy just got used to doing that. And because I had low mileage, my coaches did that purposely. So when I got to college, I would be able to increase my mileage. And in thinking about what colleges I went to answer your question about that, of course, I wanted to think about Kansas as one because Jim Ryan went to Kansas. Coach Timmons was still there. That was one. I had to plan out my 3 recruitment trips. I had some friends up at Berkeley, so I actually went on a trip to UC Berkeley. There were some good guys up there at the time. The last guy to beat me in high school cross country, Gary Bloom, was up in Berkeley. Andy Clifford was up there as well. Went on that trip, but I went to Kansas, met with Coach Timmons, and I remember Barry Williams was there. I show up, and it was probably, say, March. It was an amazing weekend in Kansas. And it's a nice picnic day. They have us out for a barbecue. And I'm thinking, hey, this weather's not so bad. I can handle this coming from California. And at some point in time, Barry pulls me aside and just says, Ralph, I just want to let you know I'm transferring out. I'm going to UCLA after this. But they didn't want me to tell you that. And it wasn't because of that I decided not to go to Kansas, but I didn't go there. And of course, my third recruitment trip, which was one of my favorite all-time stories, Oregon. So of course, Prefontaine, right? I go up there and they have me staying with Matt Centrowitz and Terry Williams at their apartment. So I'm sleeping on the couch or wherever I'm sleeping there. The two of them are just the nicest people ever. And we talk about the training, and I realize that my training is going to change, but that's what my coaches have set me up to do. And they've left that gap for me to grow into. And that's what I intend to do. Wherever I go, that's what I was going to intend to do. I wasn't doing 2-a-days in high school. When I say that, yeah, I did a sprinkling of one or two here and there, but not anything regularly. But I'm in Oregon. So Bill Dillinger takes me up into Hayward Field, the bleachers, and the team is working out. And he says, of course, you can't work out with the team, NCAA rules. And he said, but I want you to meet Bill Bowerman. Bill is retired. Nike is going full steam, growing and growing. And so it was fantastic to be talking to both the Dillinger and Bowerman up in the stands and watching the Oregon Centrowitz and all the rest of the guys working out. And so they said, we know you're going to be here for a few days. We're going to have one of the alumni come and work out with you and take you on a couple runs. So who comes running down the track? This is in March of 1975. Steve Prefontaine. So we go off for a 10-mile run. He introduces me to this idea that he brought from Scandinavia, these wood chip trails and the pre-trail. We go running for 2 days. We just pounded these 2 10-mile races for me, workouts. And from what I can remember is on one of those runs, I'm just running as fast as I can, not trying to show it. And so for me as a high school kid, I'm probably running a 52-minute 10-mile as a workout, but I'm not trying to show it. From what I remember, looks over at me and says, if we're going too slow, let me know. And it's one of those moments where you think, whatever I say, this is the most important thing I'm going to say in this next sentence. So I just sucked it up and I said, no, this is fine. Never said another word again on the entire run. And that's what I remember about my recruitment trips, planning to go to college. 2 months later, Prefontaine is gone. And I just felt so fortunate to be able to experience that and to have that story. Now, then I fast forward, get to I choose to go to Irvine, which surprised quite a lot of people because 2 months before that, they weren't even in the running. Because I knew Coach Miller had trained Eric Holst in his freshman year. And I knew a kid named Steve Scott that was not Steve Scott yet, that we know of. I wanted my parents to see me run in college. And I knew that the weather would make a difference to me, being raised in California my whole life. So that's the reason I decided to throw Irvine into the mix. And I believed in Coach Miller, a great motivator. He convinced me that they were going to do something and that he had the cream of the crop to choose from, not just myself, but everyone else. And that Eric was in fact going to be coming the following year. And I believed that and was fortunate that we won 2 NCAA D2 cross-country titles as well as 1 track title. So I'm proud of that moment, proud that I won the NC2As my freshman year individually, and that we won the 1975 NC2A cross-country D2 championship with only freshmen and sophomores. That's when Steve Scott started to really make a big difference. He finished 4th when he wasn't really in our top 3 or 4 up to the last couple of weeks prior to that. Brian Hunsaker, who had beat me in Arcadia and he ran 8:58, was my roommate my freshman year at UC Irvine. And we just had an amazing squad and lasted for quite a while.
Sorry if this recording seemed a little disjointed. I had some echo in my questions, so I had to re-record some of my questions with Ralph. This is just part 1. There's many more sections to go. Hey, I hope you enjoyed another episode. Do you have someone you'd like to hear interviewed on the podcast? You can leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on the website, running70s.com. That's running70s.com. Let me know what you think of the episodes and anyone, including yourself, you'd like to hear interviewed. I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.